So welcome everybody. We appreciate you coming back to join us. The session that you have joined is our training on checklists in ProLinkHFA, which will be presented by Tom Dang, our Senior Solutions Consultant at ProLink Solutions. Tom onboards state agencies, LIHTC application pro forma via SmartDocs mapping during our implementation phase. This training is considered an intermediate level training. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Tom to take away for our checklist training. Tom,
All
you
right.
can share your screen.
Yeah. Thank you, Bree. I'll go ahead and share my screen here.
And I can see it, so you're good to go.
That's great. All right. Thank you, Bree. All right. Hi guys. Welcome to the checklist session. Again, I'm Tom Dang with ProLink Solution. For our session today, you can see the agenda. We will talk basically A to Z through our checklist functionality in ProLinkHFA. So we'll go over the basics, creating the checklist manually, creating and adding checklist templates, checklist reporting with data views, and then checklist and workflow. So we'll get right into it. First, checklist basics. So whenever you hear checklists, right, you think about your day-to-day functions, maybe application checklists. I have to deal with some underwriting checklists, asset management checklists, lots of different checklists throughout your day-to-day on different, deals, tax credit deals, loans. And so we've built this functionality to help you manage your task, automate different functions, different items, help you implement the checklist more efficiently. So again, checklist here is a series of items that can be used to manage tasks and requirements on several objects in ProLinkHFA. Which objects can have a checklist? We're really talking most of the objects in ProLinkHFA. So you can find checklists in our dev deals, TC deals, loans, portfolio properties, REO, single family dev, and grants. So really it's implemented through our system. You can see in this little screenshot here, checklist is right on your left-hand panel. And I encourage you, if you do have our ProLinkHFA, you can go ahead and open one up and walk through with me here. So for a checklist, we'll have these very simple top-level fields: title, name of your checklist, created date. That would be auto-populated whenever the checklist is created and saved. Sort order, it's not required. It's really a field used to determine how SmartDocs interacts with checklists. So that's a little more intermediate, but definitely one way to automate your checklist. We'll get into it a bit more later in the panel. Is active, yes or no, just to indicate if it's active or not. And then the description, a text field to describe the checklist purpose or content. Now, we had our checklist. Now we get into the items in the checklist itself. For the items itself, we have the name here and a lot of different dates, very important, of course. We have the received date, when that item is set up or received, completed date, when it's finished, checked off, waived. If a item is identified as not required, you can enter that date there. And then there is a due date, when the checklist item must be done, due by. Is required, yes or no? Yeah. In a checklist, you might have some items that are must, and then some of that are optional. So that's why you have that identifier. Sort order allow you to specify the order in which the items display. And then description, yeah, just a quick description for the checklist items themselves. So you can see in this screenshot here, we have the checklist, and then down below is the checklist items. And I'll flip back and forth here between this PowerPoint and the actual HFA environment to show you in more details. And just a quick note here, checklist items are ordered by sort order and then by name. So the sort order itself is prioritized. If the sort order is not filled out, then it would just be sort by the name alphabetically. Now, once you have set up a checklist, to complete it, all of the required items must have either a completed date or a waived date, which makes sense. It's either completed or just waived, not required. The dates can be entered by clicking into the checklist items or by entering the date into the items grid. We'll go over that in the environment. And then the checklist will get a completed date equal to the date the last required item is completed or waived. So let's say if you have a checklist, you have 10 items, and the last required items is completed October 21st, then the whole checklist itself will be marked as completed on October 21st. And to get any help, questions and so on with checklists from any screen in ProLinkHFA, this is very similar to any of our other functionalities. You can access the help content by clicking this blue help icon. If you click on the blue help icon from a checklist screen itself, then you will be directed to the checklist content. And it can also just be found in our ProLinkHFA help page under basic processing, introduction to checklist section, right down here. And the checklist template help can be found in the admin panel. We'll get into the checklist template more later. But yeah, that's really the basic for our checklist functionalities. Again, to wrap up here, checklists are made up of a series of checklist items with tracking points, tasks, or milestones. Checklist items allow for population updates, including received, completed, waived, due. To complete a checklist, all required checklist items must have a completed date or a waived date. And then to access help content, you can click the blue help icon from any checklist screen in ProLinkHFA. And I'll just flip over here to just a quick example here. Again, checklist is available in most of our objects. Right now I'm under DevDeal object. And if you scroll down in your left-hand panel, again, I encourage you to open up your ProLinkHFA if you have access to it and walk through if you'd like to. Down here, you will see the checklist screen. And this one already have two checklists that I created. I'll click into one of them here. Looks like we have a risk review checklist. And the title, sort order, it's active, created date, the date where this checklist is created and saved, description, the two checklist items, all of these dates here, both are required. And I'll just kind of demonstrate quickly here. Once you click into any of these dates, it will automatically populate for you with the today's date so that you don't have to manually enter it. Otherwise, if you do have a different date than the today date, you can just update it manually. And yeah, that's really the basic of it. Now I'll flip back to our PowerPoint here. And I think we're getting to our first poll question. So yeah, Sam, you can go ahead and pop up our first poll. The first poll question here, I think it's pretty simple. How can you complete a checklist? Do you mark the checklist as completed? Or do you fill out a completed date and a waived date for all checklist items in the checklist? Or do you fill out a completed date and a waived date for all required checklist items? So, we'll open this poll question for about 30 seconds. And I think we have about maybe 5 seconds left. All right, I think it has passed. Sam, you can go ahead and close the poll question and post the results.
Hey, Tom, it should be updating, but I'm going to go ahead and read off the results. So for A, mark the checklist as completed. We have 5 responses. B, fill out a completed date and a waived date for all checklist items. We had 8 responses. And then C, fill out a completed date and a waived date for all required checklist items. And we had 21 responses.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, sounds like C is the correct answer, and it is. Yes, we would need to fill out a completed date and a waived date for all required checklist items. So in a checklist, if there are non-required items, then they don't really need a completed or a waived date to be marked as completed. And then there's no way for you to mark the checklist as a whole as completed. You can only complete a checklist if you complete all of these required items or waive them. So, all right. Sounds good. Thanks, Sam. We'll go ahead. Oh, yeah, there you go. All right. I'll go ahead to the next section. So now we have gone through the basics. We'll go through how to create the checklist manually in the system. Now, again, checklists can be created and added to all of the following objects, including HFA. From any of these objects, you can go into one of your deals, your loans, your portfolio properties, and then click on the checklist in the left navigation panel. Then once you're there, you can click on the new button here. Just on the toolbar at the top of your screen. Again, feel free to walk through this yourself. After clicking on the new button, you'll be directed to edit checklist screen. Then you can fill out these fields. Really, the title is the only required field, but the other ones are really supporting information. And I'm sure when you create the checklist, you would want it to be active. So, yeah, that's optional there. And again, the sort order is not required, and that's more for smart docs sequencing of checklists. And you can click Save to create your checklist. I guess a bit more information here on the smart doc sequencing. So once you have created your checklist, you can actually smart docs from a Excel file. Let's say you have the same checklist set up from your Excel file. You can fill out, the due date, required date, completed date, and you can do a smart doc send of that file onto the system. Let's say if you want to really utilize the Excel file instead of going into the system to fill out these dates, for example, then you can do it that way. But then there is this sequencing that would rely on the sort order. So that is the long and short of it. Now, after creating the checklist and saving it, you'll see a grid appear down there. You can click Add Checklist Item to create a new checklist item. Then, yeah, similarly, you will enter these information I'll just kind of fly through these ones because I do want to actually creating them in the system, so it's more live that way. But yeah, you can indicate if the item is required or not, enter the due date for the item, and then click save here. Now save, if you're familiar with the different functionalities in ProLinkHFA, you'll know that there are 3 save buttons. We have save, save and return, and then save and new. So save is just really to save the changes you have made on the screen, keep you on that screen. Save and return will save and then return you to that previous overall checklist screen. And then save and new will save the changes and open a new edit checklist item screen. So you can create another checklist item if you want to create like 5 or 10 items in a row. Now, yeah, I will flip back here to our ProLinkHFA environment. Again, I'm already on this checklist screen, and actually I will just click back onto it. Here you will click the new button. Fill out some information. Let's create a very important checklist. We don't need to fill out the sort order. Checklist description, very important. Must be completed. And I will click save. So you will see the created date here filled out as we mentioned in the checklist basic section. Yeah, so it's created today, and then there's the new grid down here, checklist items. Can do add checklist item, start adding into it. Name item 1, receive date. You may have not received it yet, but you may have like due date for this item, for example, due in like a week or so. It's required is automatically checked, but you can uncheck it if needed, if it's optional. Save and new. I'll do save and new because I want to save this and then create a new one right away. Item 2. No due date for this item, maybe not required. I will uncheck this. Do save and return so that I will return back to the previous screen. Yeah, so now we have this new important checklist. We have these 2 items here. The basic information filled out. And that's it. I will go ahead and go back to our wrap up. So again, yeah, you can manually create a checklist on any object that supports them. Must first create the checklist and then give it a name before you can add the checklist items under that checklist. And then you can create the checklist items by clicking into a checklist from the list checklist screen and then clicking add checklist item. That's a mouthful, but yeah, I think you have seen just now, and it's fairly simple to manually create checklists and add items there. So yeah, I think we are on to our second poll question. So Sam, you can go ahead and pull up the poll. The poll is, when creating a checklist, is sort order required? Yes and no. We'll give the poll 30 seconds. Okay, all right. I think that's about 10. All right, Sam, you can go ahead and close the poll and post the result. Yeah, there might be some. Oh, there you go. All right. Okay, looks like we have most doing no. So yeah, exactly. It is not required. is only really there to really interact with the smart docs send if needed. So when you create a checklist, only the title is required. The rest are more or less optional. All right, thank you guys for participating. I will go to the next one, next section. So creating and adding a checklist templates. So yeah, we have gone through the checklist, creating it manually, but you all have like the templated checklist. You have a whole underwriting checklist. You have a whole asset management checklist that's applied to all the deals. You don't want to manually create them every time. So here, the checklist templates allow you to create checklists and follow a template that can be used on any object. So it ensures that the end users have standardized checklists for the tasks that are common and repeatable. Right. So again, yeah, it saves time by not requiring you to create checklists from scratch. It can be found in the admin menu in the left navigation panel. And then creating the template actually require admin permission. So not every roles can create checklist templates. So here are really the steps for you to create a checklist template. You can click on that checklist template menu on the admin panel. Here you can view and modify the existing checklist templates. You can also create a new one, a new checklist template. Here are the steps to create a new checklist template. So you can again click the new button. Some of you may not be able to walk through alongside if you don't have the admin role, but yeah, you can still see through the steps here. So here you can create so these are some default fields, and it's pretty similar. We have the title, which is required. We have a default sort order. Again, it's not required. More for Smart Docs interaction, is active or not, and then description. So very similar to creating it manually. But this is active though. It is actually very important. So it does control if the template is available to users of the system. So if it's not active, then basically it will not be available in your different objects or deals when you try to add them in. And yeah, once you have filled out some few information here, you can just click save. And then add items to your template. So very similar, for sure, very similar to the to creating it manually. The same thing here, checklist items grid will be down here. There's a button to add checklist item. Now, when you do this checklist item in the checklist template, there will be just one more item here. So name is required, days until due. This is new here. So it populates the due date to be this number of days after the checklist template is added to an object. If nothing is entered, then the item will not get a specified due date. So let's say you have your underwriting checklist. Maybe some item is due 30 days after the deal is submitted into the system, and the checklist is added to that deal. So let's say today is November 1st. If you set this item to be 30 days in this days until due, then when you add this checklist template on November 1st to that deal, the due date will automatically populate as November 30th or December 1st, I guess. Yeah, so it's helpful for your automation. You know that these items always have that many due date after the checklist is pulled into the deal. So you don't have to fill out the due date every single time. It's required similarly here, and then it's active. Actually, this is active is also a bit different. This yes/no field control whether an item is included when the checklist template is added to the object. So let's say this template has 10 items, but 2 is set as non-active. Maybe it's just not applicable anymore, or it might be applicable in the future, but not now. You set it to not active. Then when you add the checklist template into that deal or that object, then only 8 items that are active will be added. So that's helpful there. And then yeah, the description field. Now, yeah, after you have added field information, you can click save to create your item there. And you will see the item in that edit checklist template screen. So we do want to note that the changes to checklist template items will only apply to new checklists created from the template. Existing checklists will not be updated when the template is updated. So let's say if you have already added this checklist template to some deals, and then now you make updates to items, you add new items into a template, then it will not be applied retroactively. It will only be applied going forward with new deals that grab the template. And so now, once you have created the template, you have added the items into it, you can then go ahead and add the template into these objects. So yeah, after creating the checklist template and marking it as active, template can be used to create a checklist on any objects that support checklists. Again, only active checklist templates will be available, and then only active checklist template items will be added when the checklist template is used. So that is active mark is very important. Now, after clicking into that checklist screen, if you recall, there is a new button and then a new from template button. So here we will do new from template. You'll see the whole list of all of the checklist template that you have. You can select 1, 2, or several if needed. Add selected and then close button there. And then you will see those checklists in there. You can click on the checklist to make any updates needed. If these are templates, but for your particular deal, you may have some updates here and there for different items. You may waive some item right away. You may want to add a few more items that are not on a global scale, but more just particular to that deal. You can make any updates you want, but at least you start out from that template, right? Already reduce a lot of work there. But you need to note that you cannot update checklist item names or if an item is required. So those will stay, the name and then the required status will not be updatable. And then any changes you make to that checklist will apply to only the checklist on your object and will not apply to the template. So yeah, the checklist template stay the same and can only be updated by the admin roles. So there's another functionality here. When you create a new checklist template, you have the option to copy from an existing template to save time. So, an example could be let's say you have a underwriting checklist for 2024, and in 2025, you may make some changes to that underwriting checklist. You may maybe add some items or just update here and there, but not totally. So then you could make a copy of that 2024 checklist, and then just make the updates from that one. So save you a ton of time there. And we will switch over here to the system, and I can demonstrate a few things. So again, checklist template is on your admin panel on the left navigation panel. So you'll find it under admin here. Checklist templates. Here we have all of the different templates here. Can do new. Very similar. Just fill out a title. You may not need a default sort order. Fill out a description and do save. And add checklist item. One is required. Days until due. Again, that's a new field there that will auto-populate when you add a checklist. So whatever day you add that checklist template into an object, we'll just add this amount of days onto that date. Description, save and new, save and return, save buttons. It's very similar. I'll do save and return here. And so now we have, just created a checklist template. I will go ahead and quickly show you guys the copy checklist function. Well, we have a asset management checklist 2022. Let's say I want to create a 2023 version while keeping this 2022 version intact. So, I have some history, right? I would do copy checklist. This button here, copy checklist. Once I click it, it would show up automatically. So you can see asset management checklist 2022 copy. I'll just take this copy out and do my 2023. Well, that's very old. I'll do 2025. And you can make any changes as applicable. You can add new items, update all of these items if needed, update the due dates or whatnot, but it's there for you, so you don't have to create all of these items from scratch. Save and return. So now that you, it will just show up automatically down here in your checklist template screen. And I will go ahead and go back to one of these objects here. Just to quickly show you guys the adding from checklist function. So go to checklist, the new from template. So I don't have to manually type up all those, right? So new from template. All of my different checklist templates. I'll just add in my 2025. I know this asset management, but I'm on a dev deal. It's fine just for demonstration. So just select that. Or if you want to select several, that's that works as well. Add selected and close. And they all show up. And actually, now that I'm here, I want to quickly demonstrate the complete checklist thing, because that was our first or second poll question. in here, the important checklist status is incomplete. I'll go ahead and go in here. We have completed and waived. This one is required. I will just do completed and then save. Actually, I will just do save and return. And yeah, it is now marked as completed. A completed date is filled out. And yeah, as you can see, only the required item has to be completed. And that's how you would complete a checklist. All right, sorry for the sidetrack there. I'll go back to the PowerPoint to wrap up. So again, checklist template allow you to standardize your tasks and processes, your checklist across your organization, really all in all of your deals, your loans, portfolio properties. They can be found in the admin menu panel. You can modify the checklist created from a template, but you cannot modify the item name, and then if the item is required. And then updates to the checklist template will only apply to checklists created going forward and not retroactive. Okay, all right, I think we are heading to our third poll question, creating, yeah, Sam, you can go ahead and pull that up. Our poll question is creating checklist templates requires admin roles and permission, true or false? All right, we'll also have 30 seconds for this one. Anyone create checklist template or only the admin? Or admin roles, permissions? We have 10 seconds left. Okay, all right, I think 30 seconds is up. Sam, you can go ahead and close the poll and post the results. There could be a bit slight delay here.
Yeah, it could be, Tom. So the responses were true, 24 responses, and then false, there were 6.
All right, okay, sounds good. Yeah, so it is true. Yeah, only admin roles can create checklist templates. Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, thanks, Sam. I'll move on to our next section here, checklist reporting with data views. So now we have gone through checklist basic, creating them manually, creating a template, and then adding the template into your different deals. Now, you may think about your whole portfolio, right? Let's say you have 10 deals, yeah, definitely more than that, but let's say you have 10 deals, you have 10 different checklists. If you were dealing with it in Excel, you would have to like open all the 10 Excel checklists up and review them, see where different items are, which ones are completed, which ones are incomplete, which could be a hassle. So we would want to make it more efficient for you for your reporting, and that is done with data views. The checklist-specific data views can be found in the Data View section of the Lab Navigation panel. You can go ahead and go to the folder for your object where you want to see the checklist information. And then some folders can contain 2 data views, a checklist level and then the checklist items level. So if you are already familiar with our data view functionalities, it's a way for you to see data across your whole portfolio, right? So it's pretty similar with our checklists. Going into these checklist data views, you'll see very high level results across your portfolio. And I think that is very powerful. First thing here, checklist data view would contain high level checklist information, only one row per checklist. It does not have checklist item specific, so only checklist information and not checklist item information. And it's useful to see if there's any incomplete checklists. And the row click would direct you to the edit checklist screen for the selected checklist. You can see in the quick screenshot here, these are the different checklists, and you can see the checklist status incomplete here. How many items are there? How many are required? And then how many have been completed? So overall, you can see right away for this one property here, for example, which ones have been completed, which ones are still incomplete, which ones have the most incomplete items, and you can click on to that row right away to go into that specific checklist for that specific deal or that specific object. Very easy to access information from this data view. Now we have the checklist items data view as well. So this is more drill down into the different checklist items. So you will see all of the checklist items in all of the checklists, and including the dates for those items contain one row per checklist item. So it does not have the checklist status if the whole checklist is completed or not. It's really on the checklist item level. And this would be useful to see if there are any upcoming or overdue checklist items. And row click would direct you to that specific item in the checklist. And we're quick to the wrap up here, but let me just go back to our system and walk through it a bit. Here, yeah. So again, data view, you can go into our left navigation panel, go into data view, open different folders here. But I am in the portfolio property checklist. And in here, you can see, yeah, all of these information. And as any other data view, you can turn filter on. Maybe you only care about the incomplete checklist. So let's say let's find incomplete. Okay, so all of these checklists here are incomplete. Some have a few complete items, some have zero. Maybe let's say I am interested in seeing only ones that are almost complete, maybe, or no, that's a wrong way to say it. Maybe let me filter. I mean, let me sort this by the number of complete items, and I do have to unfilter the other ones, unsort the other ones. Well, overall though, you do see very high level information. And let's say you are looking for this checklist in particular, 5 items completed, 7 non-completed. You don't have to go and like search for Birch Island or go to other screens, right? You can just go straight into it by clicking on this row and then see what items are incomplete. And yeah, just very fast and easy way to access your information on a overall level. That's checklist items. I'll go back here. The checklist items data view, again, it's more granular. you'll see all of the items in the specific checklist. And similarly, you can turn the filter on. Maybe you only want to see the required items. So you can filter there on the is required. Maybe you want to see all the upcoming items that are due. You can filter by the due date as well, and do like greater than this day, or no, sorry, less than this day. Let's say I want to see all the items that are due by November 1st, then that's a way you can do so. And that's like instantaneous result across your whole portfolio. Of course, you can filter by the checklist that you are more interested in. So only asset management checklist, for example. So you can drill down into your information very easily using these filtering, this data view, due dates, without having to like open 50 different Excel checklist files. So that is the checklist reporting for us. To wrap up here, checklist reporting can be done with checklists and checklist items data views on the left navigation panel. Checklist data view can be used to report on top level checklist information, including the status for those checklists. Then checklist items can be used to report on overdue and upcoming items. All right, and we are getting to our last section, checklist and workflow. So to wrap up here, we have gone through how to create checklists manually. I've gone through creating them from the template and how to report on different status for the checklist and checklist items. Now, like a further way to automate things is using workflow with the checklist. One example here, and the workflow, any workflow can be that is set up to evaluate an object, can support checklists. That support checklist can be configured to add a checklist based on a template. Let's say you are adding portfolio property in your into your portfolio, and you know that the checklist template will need to be added to that portfolio property. And we did go through that process of how you can manually add it from the template. But the workflow goes a step further and add the template into that portfolio property automatically. So that's a further way to automate your process if you were going to do that manually anyway for every single portfolio deals. So I'm just reiterating that example here, adding checklists to every new portfolio property that is created. So you can create a workflow, set up the criteria to evaluate when a property record is created, and then click the checklist templates tab and add the checklist templates desired. Now I'll just flip back here to the system really quick. Workflow, you can find them in the admin panel again. And these are the workflows I have. I'll click on this asset management checklist workflow. Now, the details on how you can create this workflow, I think that's another time, but there are quite a bit of information here. Specifically, though, this is that example that I was having in the slide for portfolio property on create or update. There is a description here. This workflow will add the asset management checklist for all properties when total units exceed 0, which generally it should, but That's how you can add the criteria to make sure that's like a real portfolio property. And you have set up the schedule events in the checklist templates itself. That's where you add that checklist template to be added to the deal when it's created. So that's one step further for automation. Same thing can be done with dev deal. When you underwrite a deal, add a dev deal into the system. A checklist, a underwriting checklist, for example, can be added automatically. So you don't have to manually create them. You don't have to add them manually. It's just really automatic that way. Now, another example of how workflow can be helpful, and I know we are 5 minutes away here. This workflow to evaluate individual checklist items is also very helpful. This example, you want to notify asset managers when one of their checklist items is approaching its due date. So again, more automation. They don't even need to go into the data view to see which ones are approaching its due date. You can just create a workflow here, set these criteria up. So maybe you only want to see the required checklist items. If it has blank values or blank values for completed or waived date, and then checklist item has a due date before today or within the next 7 days. So all of these criteria for the workflow can be set up. You can see in the screenshot here, checklist items within the 7 days, completed date and waive date are empty and is required. Setting all these up, and you can and the workflow will notify asset managers for any of these checklist items. And of course, you can set the criteria for the checklist name as well. And that's the next one, actually. Checklist title here. So before it was checklist items, here's evaluating the checklist on an overall level. This example is you want to notify underwriting that deal intake steps have been completed. So you'd want the criteria, the title of that checklist to equal to deal intake steps. And then the completed date has been modified and it's not empty. So if you recall, we have that completed date auto-populated when the last required items is completed in that checklist, right? So once that's done, the workflow will notify underwriting. So really a lot of possibility for automation, for notification, for adding template into the deals, and so on. Just quickly to wrap up here. Workflow can be used in conjunction with checklists to further automate any standard manual processes. Can be used to add checklists from a template to any objects that support checklists. Then workflow can be used to evaluate checklists and checklist items to inform users that the task have been completed or need attention because due date is coming up, and so on. Okay, and I think that's it for our session. Sam, do we have any questions?
No, Tom, no outstanding questions.
Okay. All right. Yeah. With that, I'll read it back to Bree.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Assuming no questions are submitted in the next couple minutes, I'll go ahead and wrap up. First of all, thank you very much, Tom, for joining us and hosting this training. Tom joined ProLink within the year, and so this is a great opportunity for us to introduce him to ProLink Tech Live, and I very much appreciate him in hosting this session. Thank you everybody else for joining it. I hope you found value in this one as well. We have a copy of the PowerPoint available here on the slide, and it's on the side panel under resources. You can find that. So I'm just sharing that screenshot again for you, and you can continue to access the materials for this session over the next 90 days by logging into Cvent. So with that, I'm going to let you head on into your break. Enjoy that, and we'll see you in just a bit.